Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to dive into, well, let me give you a hint. No, I'm not robbing a bank. That's not your first guess. It is cold outside. It is winter time. My top five baits for the month of December. December is it's winter time. Winter is here. Water temps from around my area are in that 48 to 55 degree water temperature. And realistically, this is the thing, okay? Some places up north, even back home in Indiana, some of the places even further north, a lot of you guys have hard ice. It's already, some of the people are already ice fishing, but there is opportunities to get into open water. So I'm going to try to keep this sort of diverse and give some of the anglers that are experiencing the coldest water temperatures. I'm talking 38, 39, 40, 41 degrees water temperatures, and dealing with that frigid cold weather and still trying to get out there and catch a few bass. I'm gonna have a couple picks for you, of course. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about, most of these water temperatures that I'm dealing with in really down south from Kentucky south is really seem to be that 40 degree water temperature, 45 and a little bit higher. December for me, this is winter time. Winter time is officially here. November is that transition month. December, you get those really cold nights, and things start to sort of starts to drop in a lot of our lakes. So you get to winter pool, and these fish have to reset. They have to find their winter homes, and ultimately, it takes a little while for that to happen. The big thing about this, very similar to the fall, it seems to me that shad or bait fish are typically the number one forage. Now, that does start to change later on in the year, or, well, ultimately into next year. But this is the thing. For me, most of my baits that I'm using are trying to imitate a shad for the most part. That's what the fish are really keying on. That could be threadfin shad, that could be gizzard shad, that could be little minnows, that could be bluegill even. It really, they're all really feeding on some sort of bait fish, typically that year's hatch of fish. So anyway, let's dive into this. Let's not get too technical, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an understanding of what was going on. The number one thing, first thing you got to think about before you even get into the lure side of this, okay? Ultimately, you want to dress warm, okay? Ultimately, having some good gloves, a good warm hat, some outerwear like this little Magellan fleece hoodie that I wear all the time, something like that. You're gonna definitely want to gear up. If you got a little thing to grab some coffee or some tea, something a little bit of warm afternoon, a cup of coffee is always great as well. So now we're gonna dive into the fishing side of this. Okay, this is the deal. I love fishing this time of year, but I hate fishing this time of year because it is a very fine line of a very successful day on the water and getting skunked. This is probably the toughest time of year to catch them consistently, but it can be the most amazing as well. First off, the number one bait I'm going to pick, and you guys see this on the channel a ton, the Storm Largo Shad. I have him right here. This is my dude. I've caught so many bass on him over the years. And realistically, wintertime fishing is about bait fish. So I'm going to imitate the bait or what the size bait that they're ultimately eating. Typically, if they're eating bigger shad, gizzard shad, I'm going to be throwing the 4-inch. And then if they're eating the smaller bait fish like threadfin, I'm going to be using this 3-inch. Now, the thing about this is I'm going to slow roll this on the bottom. Rather than really trying to reel it up high in the water column, I'm going to try to slow roll this on the bottom, reel it up, kill him, drop him back down the bottom, and slow roll. I throw this little small guy with a 1/4 ounce head on a spinning rod, and I throw this guy right here, typically on a bait caster with about 10 or 12 pound fluorocarbon, especially in the wintertime, because I'm trying to keep that bait down there towards the bottom where I feel like those fish are really sitting at. So 3-inch Largo Shad, 4-inch Largo Shad, 1/4 ounce head. This is actually a 5/16 ounce head. Both of these heads are the VMC hybrid swim bait jig. It's like a jig head, and the reason why they call it a hybrid is they have that O'Shaughnessy hook, or really a hybrid of a O'Shaughnessy hook and a round bend. That's why I really love that hook. Next on my list for some of those anglers that are trying to get into the shallower water, one of the old school staples. You have to have this on one of your rods in the wintertime. It is a number 5 shad wrap. 2 colors here, typically shad, and I have a crawdad. This is actually a shad pattern, But the hue, and this is something that's very interesting about a crankbait that I feel like is probably the number one cold water killer. This one right here that I've ever seen. Like, this sucker just catches so many bass, and it's caught so many bass throughout the history of its existence. It's crazy. But it is a shad pattern, okay? But it's orange, super bright orange belly, brownish orange back, and orange side, and they call it crawdad. I don't get that, but trust me, they eat him, and especially when they're eating crawdads, they do. So, I said that I always try to imitate a shad. Now, this color right here, I am imitating a crayfish. And so in the shallow water, some of these fish, the shad will start to move out into the deeper water, and all they have to eat are crawdads. So that's when I start to pick up a crawdad imitator like this dude right here. Now, it just sort of depends on your water clarity. Your water clarity, you want it to be a little bit more stained. If you get towards the backs of the creeks, the last little bit of depth in that creek arm, or you have some riprap banks that have a little bit of, you get a sunny day and the sun starts beating on that bank pretty good. These are two baits that I'm definitely going to be throwing. They run about, I'm going to say 4 to 6 feet. So I throw them on a spinning rod. You can throw them on a bait caster if you're pretty solid at it. It does take some skills to do that. I throw it on a 7-foot medium action, medium light spinning rod, real slow, and just pull it around those rocks and catch them pretty solid. So that's my number 2 pick. Okay, number 3, I'm going to switch this up a little bit, okay? This one is an old one, but a good one. Blade baits. Blade baits right here, I have 2. The OG, from my understanding, like Silver Buddies, Head and Sonars. They catch a lot of fish. Metal baits, heavier heads. And the way you fish these little dudes right here, I've caught so many bass in ponds that I fished around my house, in river systems, on big lakes, highland reservoirs. This bait, a blade bait, is probably the most underrated bass fishing lure this time of year. Okay, it's talked about a little bit, but it's not. I just feel like it's something that we don't throw a ton of. And I have 2 colors right here. I have like a gold blade bait, and this is a white one. Depending on the watercolor, you can switch them up, silvers. But basically all you're doing, you're not really fishing. This is sort of like a metal lipless crankbait, if you will, but you're not fishing him like a lipless crankbait. What you're doing is casting it out there, and you're picking your rod tip up and just barely making that bait move. And what it's doing is it's falling on the bottom and then it's moving up, falling back down. And a lot of these, since I sort of like that swim bait, like I talked about, you're wanting to keep in contact with the bottom. If you have a whole bunch of stumps around, a whole bunch of snags around, this is probably not the bait to use in that application, but a phenomenal lure to use when you cannot get a bite. And gets bites. It does. If you're getting skunked on your day out there, wintertime fishing, and you got a blade bait in your box, you probably want to pick this guy up and make a few casts in the same little area before you leave and call it a day and just pack it up. So 3, pick up one of your favorites. There's a ton of them out there. I have a ton of them. I don't get to use them as much in the summertime or in the tournament season, but it's definitely something you're going to want in your tackle box. Number four. Okay, so you guys know this one's coming because it is probably, in my opinion, over the last year, the biggest impact in tournament bass fishing has been because of these lures. Now, they suspend. You can do a lot of different things to them. The suspended jerkbait is an absolute killer in the wintertime. Water temperatures start to get cold. The big thing is the difference between last month and this month, my suspending jerkbaits, really comes down to moving these jerkbaits a lot slower. As that water temperature starts to slow down, I'm really starting to let that bait sit there in the strike zone a little bit longer. Forward-facing sonar has made this a lot easier for some pro anglers and some anglers that have that technology. And you can actually see the mood of the fish sometimes, and they'll just sit there and they'll look at your bait, and you'll just twitch it, and they'll look at it, and then you twitch it, and they're just following it, and they're just so lethargic they don't want to bite it, and all of a sudden it's just sitting there and it's just hovering, and they just dunk, they bite it. So a lot of times I will slow down. Now this is the thing: not every day means just because it's cold outside or the water's cold means that they're going to bite it slow. I have had days where a jerk bait, I'm throwing it out there, and I jerk that bait down there, and I can jerk it a little bit faster and get those fish to react in super cold water, in in the middle 40s. This right here is one of my favorites. This is a Rapala Shadow Rap Deep. The big key with a jerk bait in the wintertime specifically is you want, for me, this is my own personal opinion, I like my jerk baits to slow sink. From suspend to slow sink. And when a shad, think about it, when a shad is dying and he's swimming, he stops and he just starts to slow sink down. And then he comes back up and he repeats it all over again. Slow sinks down. That is exactly what a jerkbait is really imitating. The way you can do this, one, is swapping out your hooks. This jerkbait right here is already a slow sink, so right out of the package it has some light wire hooks to where it really just slowly sinks. You could actually put, if you want to get your jerkbait a little bit deeper, you can put bigger hooks on there and actually get it down there, 6 or 8 inches or a foot deeper. So that's one for sure, and this is a 13 Fishing Loco special. I think it's called Casper Shad, and it's a great little jerkbait too. Both of these run that 5 to 7 foot range. I've caught fish on a 5 to 7 foot jerkbait in 15, 20 foot of water. A lot of times because those fish are up off the bottom and they're looking up this time of year. Rod, line, I'm normally throwing 10 to 12 pound fluorocarbon. You can throw monofilament, absolutely. And then probably a 6.6 to a 6.10 medium action rod, fast tip, something that you can get down there to count them down there, figure out the cadence for the day, and reel a few bass in. Okay, so we went through 4 baits that I truly feel like, hey, I want to have all these baits on. If I'm having a tournament, I'm going fishing tomorrow on a brand new body of water that I've never seen before, these 4 lures are definitely going to be on my deck from the start of me dropping my boat in. Now, this last one is one you're going to expect, but it's not one I'm going to have an old school twist that you guys probably aren't going to guess. Last but not least is a jig. Okay, this is a 3/8 ounce jig for some of my people up north that are dealing with the extreme cold. I'm talking them low 40s water temperatures, as cold as all get out. You barely can feel your tips of your fingers. You got gloves on, all that stuff. A jig, finesse jig more specifically, and what am I going to pair him up with? I just bought these, y'all. Old school pork, okay? Old school Uncle Josh pork frog. I don't know if it matters, but I remember back in the day. I'm going to open this thing up and show you what I'm talking about. Some of y'all probably don't even know what I'm talking about right here. This is a pork rind. It's a pork frog. You put it back on a jig. I remember back in the day, okay, I had my buddies. They used to have like a concoction where they put something in these things and it would soften them up and they would swear by it. Now we use a lot of plastic, but that right there is a pork frog. Okay, Uncle Josh. Now what you do, he's got a little slit in him up towards the top. That's why, hold up, I got to get him in there. You got to cut him. Oh, there it is. Okay, there you go. Found him. There you go. You just thread him on there like that. He stays on there right nice and snug. And you have an OG pork frog on your jig. That is my pick right there. Now, I literally, like I said, I have buddies of mine, friends of mine up there in northern Indiana, that love an old school pork frog. And I know you couldn't get them for a long time, but I thought it was something that I had to bring it back. I had to talk about it, and especially if you're dealing with cold conditions. I'm talking, like I said, them cold conditions. I feel like any little bit can help. Scent. Yeah, a little scent right there. Something natural, slow and low and slow, just dragging that jig. It tends to get some bites. So something to try. That's definitely one. I figured I'd throw y'all for a loop a little bit. Some of you might have guessed the top 5. Some of you might not. I bet you all didn't guess the pork frog. There's obviously a ton of different lures that I wanted to put in this top 5, but I have a couple of them that I'm leaving for the month of January because that's when one little thing happens that I didn't really want to talk about it yet because it's not happening in December typically across the country. But January is the month for this deal. So you're going to have to wait till next month. Hopefully these lures will help you go out and catch a few fish. Make sure to drop a comment below. Let me know if I missed something. Also, if you go out and these lures helped you catch a fish or a couple fish in cold weather conditions, drop a comment below. Let me know they helped you, because these are a lot of fun to do. I try to give you guys a little bit of understanding of how my mind processes some of this information and what these fish are doing. But I also understand a lot of anglers all across the country are out there trying to get that last bite in before the new year. And these are the baits that I'm going to go out there to do that. So I wanted to pass them along. Happy New Year to you all. It's going to get to that point. We're a month away. Christmas is around the corner. I'm sort of pumped up. I got that little one, baby Hudson. He's little as can be. Olivia's going to be turning 3 here in a little bit in January. Life comes at you fast, and the season is just around the corner. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate you guys, and we will see you on the next one.